current series of webinars in partnership with the United Nations Counter-Terrorism Centre, the UNCCT. My name is Tony Kingham. I'm editor of Border Security Report magazine. I'm also director of the World Border Security Congress and the Border Security Network. Today's webinar is Central Asia Border Challenges. But as usual, before we go on, I'd like a couple of housekeeping points. You'll see a QA tab on the top right-hand side of your screen. You can ask questions there at any time during the webinar, and the team will try to answer as many as possible at the end. If at any time your screen freezes, please press the refresh button, and you should automatically rejoin us. Once again, we have a distinguished panel of experts. But first of all, with some opening remarks, we have Mr. Ulrich Arnfeldt-Møllerup, Chief of the Countering Terrorism Section of the UNCCT. Ulrich, you have the floor.
Thanks, Tony, and welcome everybody to this webinar on border challenges in the Central Asia region in the context of counterterrorism and related transnational organized crime. I'm delighted to open this last webinar of View to a Border, a series of 4 geographic-focused technical dialogues that UNCCT, in partnership with the World Border Security Congress, has been conducting over the last 2 months. These webinars have been delivered under the framework of UNCCT's Global Border Security and Management Program, which aims to strengthen member states' capacities to prevent the cross-border movement of terrorists and stem the flow of foreign terrorist fighters, or FTFs. Effective border security and management is the first line of defense in detecting and preventing the movement of terrorists and FTFs across borders, as well as preventing the smuggling or trafficking of persons, drugs, small arms and light weapons, and other illicit cargo that may be used for terrorist purposes. However, it is also important to recognize that measures to counter terrorism may have far-reaching impacts on the rule of law and human rights, in particular the right to privacy, the right to freedom of movement, the right to liberty and security. Yet, I wish to note that effectively countering terrorism and protecting and promoting human rights are both fully achievable and mutually reinforcing objectives. Through our Border Security and Management Unit, UNCCT is committed to supporting member states to responsibly implement comprehensive border security and management measures and strategies, enhance technical and operational capacities, and increase interagency and cross-border cooperation and information sharing in line with international law. Like many other regions, Central Asia has been confronted with rapidly transforming terrorism threat landscape that is increasingly transnational in nature. Returning and/or relocating fighters from Syria and Iraq, instability and conflict in Afghanistan and elsewhere in the wider region, and quote-unquote homegrown violent extremism are elements which all pose threats within the region. Within the framework of the 2011 Joint Plan of Action, the first regional plan for the implementation of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy in the world, UNCCT supports Central Asia in implementing the 4 pillars of the global strategy. We are doing this work in close partnership with the United Nations Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy for Central Asia, known as UNRCCA, and the countries of the region. On the basis of CTAP recommendations and the needs identified by the beneficiary countries, UNCCT provides tailored technical assistance in the area of counterterrorism and the prevention of violent extremism at the regional and national levels to adequately respond to emerging challenges on the ground. Central Asian states have identified border security as one of the priority areas and stressed the need for more efforts aimed at identifying measures to address border management problems in the region. In this regard, a specific focus has been given to border security and management through the capacity building activities such as regional training courses on BSM and provision of support in the development of a counterterrorism strategy with a strong component on border security. During the webinar today, we will hear from counterterrorism coordinators, border and law enforcement officials, and practitioners, as well as experts from international and regional organizations who will share with us their expertise, experiences, and ideas for addressing the challenges that member states face in effectively securing their borders. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Particularly, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our guest speakers. This webinar would not have been possible without their contributions and invaluable insights and perspectives. I sincerely hope that you will find the interactive dialogue interesting and encourage you to actively participate in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So, without further ado, I will now give the floor to my colleague, Ms. Christine Bradley, the Program Manager of the UNCCT's Global Border Security and Management Program, who will be our moderator for this webinar. Christine, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ulrich, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to the final webinar in our geographic series. Once again, I'm very pleased to be moderating our discussions regarding the threat landscape, border management challenges, and national, regional, and international response measures and mechanisms relating to countering terrorism and transnational organized crime within the Central Asia region. As with our previous webinars, we have a very interesting program for our discussions today. But before we begin, I'd really want to just quickly note that the opinions expressed by our presenters today do not necessarily reflect the views of the Secretariat of the United Nations or the governments of its member states. And now, to get us started, we would like to begin our first session that will really lay out the context and frame the region's current threat landscape. So let me waste no more time and proceed with introducing our first expert speaker, my colleague and good friend, Ms. Esther Zubiri, who is a senior expert within the UN Counter-Terrorism Centre's Global Border Security and Management Program and former Chief of Rule of Law, Justice and Human Rights at UNDP in Afghanistan. Esther, the floor is all yours.
Many thanks, Christine. Good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today.